All right, to start, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I've been here in Austin roughly just over 15 years. I went to UT for both my undergrad and my graduate degree. I've been working here for over 10 years. Tried to leave several times and somehow UT keeps drawing me back. I live in Windsor Park with my husband and my twin boys. They're fraternal, almost 5 years old now. So yeah, that's a little about me.
What made you choose UT?
Well, for my undergrad, I came to UT because I was very lucky. I received a full ride scholarship here from the largest private family foundation in Texas called the Terry Foundation. Really a gift that changed my life, and came to UT to do theater, incidentally. I'm using some of those skills today, but not the degree itself, and worked professionally in theater for a while. I came back to UT for my graduate degree because I wanted to do a career change after working in theater for some time. I did public policy at the LBJ school. But then how I got here career-wise is the through line of my career has been in higher education administration and leadership development, working with students, just education in general. I worked with Texas 4000, which is a leadership development program for UT students, but it's a private nonprofit. I worked there for a number of years, and then the medical school was opening up. I had an opportunity to come work at the medical school, and that's what brought me back to UT career-wise, and I've been here ever since.
What's something people might be surprised to learn about you?
Coming back to that Texas 4000 piece, I'm a huge biker, love to ride my bike. And actually, when I was in college here at UT for my bachelor's degree, I rode my bike from Texas to Alaska as part of Texas 4000. So it's 4,500 miles. And that sort of set off a lifelong love of bicycle touring and just bicycle riding in general. So sometimes if you're at UTA, you'll see my bike. It's actually here today, my cargo bike that I use for my kids. But I love to bike. And our cargo bike has almost 5,000 miles on it now in roughly 4 years. So I think a lot of people are surprised at first because it is a lot of bike riding, but I think it's the best way to see a place and to get from point A to point B.
Awesome. What first brought you to enterprise technology?
Yeah, so those of you who've kept up with D2I, we came to enterprise technology in May. And so what brought me to D2I is actually a bit of a story about the power of connection. So at the medical school, the administrator for the department I worked in was Kathy Stacy, who later went on to be chief of staff for Provost Sharon Wood. And when D2I was getting started, she actually called me. And at the time I was department director in psychiatry at Del Med. And she said, hey, we're about to start this new department. They need an operations person. I think you'd be a good fit. I'll send you the posting. If you're interested, you should apply. And so really that's how I came to D2I, right? I trusted Kathy a lot, and I looked at the position, I thought it sounded interesting, starting up a new org, really building out a culture, hiring up people, building the operational structures. And so that's how I got to D2I. Over the course of my time in D2I, the org obviously changed and grew a ton as we were implementing our 4-year plan. And it was always the plan that we would come to enterprise technology once enterprise technology was sort of formed and we had the new CIO in place. And so in the last year, as it became clear that move was sort of imminent, right? We worked very closely with Cole to make sure that we made the move smoothly, that we could integrate into enterprise technology. And that's when I stepped into the role I'm in now as executive director of D2I.
How did your career path lead you to your current position?
Yeah, that's a great question, honestly, because my career path has been quite varied. So I mentioned I have a bachelor's degree in theater. I did stage management, so there is a through line there. If you know anything about stage management, there's a through line, right? So about organization, keeping things running, kind of the operations of a production. And I actually did that professionally after I graduated. I went to Boston. I worked at American Rep there. And I also worked at Steppenwolf in Chicago, which I loved. I loved doing that, but it really became clear to me that I wanted a different type of schedule, really, and sort of different type of work, something that I felt a little bit more like I had control over more processes outside of a production. So that's why I came back to Texas. I did an AmeriCorps Vista year. It's kind of like the domestic Peace Corps. I worked at a literacy nonprofit in North Texas, and then I applied to graduate school. And so in graduate school, I did public policy, nonprofit administration. And for one reason or another, when I graduated, I had the opportunity to come back to Texas 4000 and develop a program there. And so the through line really of all of this is I really like developing things from the ground up, processes, systems, operational stuff. After Texas 4000, I was looking to come to the med school, frankly. It was starting up. I was really interested in the startup of a brand new school, in a medical school at UT. And there was an opportunity to run a really large federally grant funded program for graduate students. And so that had a connection to the Texas 4000 work of working with students. And I came to the medical school to do that. In that department, I eventually did a little bit of everything over time. My role grew and changed. That program grew. We needed more people to run it. I took on a faculty sort of affairs role in the department. I took on some HR components, and eventually I was interim senior director of the department. And then I told the story already of how I ended up in D2I, right? So that's sort of how I ended up where I am. People are often surprised to know that I'm not a technologist. I don't have a technical background. And this is going to be controversial, I don't think it's necessary to lead a large unit if you have a lot of really great people with the technical skills. So I see my role as, how do I make sure that the work that we're doing is recognized? How do I make sure that we're able to have the money and the people and the right tools to do our jobs and deliver on it? So it's kind of, in a sense, industry agnostic, my role and my background, and that's how I ended up here in D2I.
Can you tell us about one of the most rewarding moments in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what's most rewarding for me, period, is helping other people sort of unlock their potential. I love supervising people. This always gets a laugh from people for some reason. But coaching is one of my passions. I love being able to help people find what they're good at and be able to deploy it on projects that interest them and grow. I think in terms of most rewarding moments of my career, I've been very lucky in several instances to coach people who I believe I was helpful to their, leadership development process, to be able to figure out what they wanted to be doing and how they wanted to get to where they are. And one of those people is actually in D2I. It's maybe another little known fact that Fred, who's within our analytics and campus engagement team, he's actually someone I mentored in Texas for 1,000 and kept in touch with, stayed friends. And when the opportunity came up in D2I for a role that I thought was a good fit for him, I passed it on to him. And he was lucky enough to end up in the position. But just in general, I think the things I find most rewarding are coaching other people, unlocking their potential, being able to help people get to the next step in their career or in life. I love mentoring. It's a big part of my personal life, is mentoring students for the foundation that I'm on the board of as well.
How do you stay inspired and motivated in your role?
Yeah, it's a good question. In general, and this comes back to what I was just saying before, but in general, what inspires me is helping people. A big part of that gift I mentioned for my undergraduate degree, a big concept of the Terry Foundation is giving back, and this idea that if someone gave you a hand with something, you should sort of pass it on. And in some ways that drives everything I do, both in my family, but also more broadly. I love to do public service. So I'm on the Parks and Recreation Board for the city. I'm also on the board of the Terry Foundation. And what inspires me for this work is the idea that we can make a difference, right? And mainly that we can not just make a difference for an individual student or for students as a whole, but that we can enrich the overall ability for the university to make a large scale difference. So some people might look at it and think like we're just one small piece of the puzzle, right? But the way I look at it is, if I can do my job really well, if the unit can do our job really well, then when the provost opens, a report that he gets from the faculty affairs, administrator, and she's pulling from a dashboard that we made, that right there is helping them make a decision for how the university operates that should lead to better outcomes for our students. And so that motivates me in general, is just the idea of making a difference.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever given or received?
That's another great question. I think the best piece, and I could answer this a lot of ways. I've received so much good advice in my life from so many people along the way. And I think perhaps the best piece of advice that I could give someone comes from my recent experience here in D2I, which is that you should really focus on doing what's right, not what's necessarily easiest. And that comes up a lot in my job, frankly, because a lot of the work we do is really hard. A lot of it is transformative. A lot of it involves pushing cultural change. And that can be something that's easy for people to resist, or people have a lot of reasons to resist it, right? But you gotta be focused on what's the right thing. What's the right thing for UT? The number of times I repeat this, like, do what's right for UT, to the folks I work with is like huge, but I think you could apply it to anything in your life, right? If you focus on doing the right thing, even if it's hard, you're gonna end up with a better outcome. You're going to learn more. You're going to get more people ultimately to the end of the road with a better deliverable or a better thing, right? Than if you focus on the easy path. And I think from that standpoint, I think though it's a complex piece of advice, I think it's probably the best one I would have to give to someone.
What type of advice would you give to somebody starting their career?
Take all the opportunities that you can. My career is, on paper, quite bizarre, but a lot of it was because I met somebody, they opened a door. The door may not have made perfect sense at the time, but I thought that's interesting. I'd like to learn more. Let me try that out. I think always learning and being open and curious about things is huge. You don't have to know what the end game is. Like, I think a lot of people think like, well, I have to know that I want to be a CIO or I want to, be in charge of this type of technical work. But really, I think you just have to be curious. You have to be willing to take the opportunities that are given to you. If something pushes you out of your comfort zone, I encourage people to always say yes to those things. You're going to learn something from it, even if the thing you learn is that you don't want to do it again, right? So I think just being open to opportunities is a huge part, and putting yourself out there, making sure you're meeting people and networking is huge as well. But that goes hand in hand with opportunities, I think.